The Chicago Bears control their own destiny in the NFC playoffs, but the most likely outcome is that they begin the postseason with a regular season rematch.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. On the show today, we're going to look at the Bears' different playoff scenarios. If they win against the 49ers or lose against the 49ers, if they win against the Lions or lose against the Lions, what seed they could end up in, what other teams and games we should be keeping an eye on, and who the Bears then might play in the playoffs. Really, most scenarios come down to one or two teams, and it almost doesn't matter too much how the Bears' final games go. It just matters of what seed everybody ends up in, but the opponents are likely going to be one of a couple of options there. We'll also look at the Bears Pro Bowl players this time around, the 3 guys that got in, as well as the guys who didn't get in, and just how crazy Bears fans went in the fan voting aspect of the Pro Bowl, which only counts as a third of the merit towards who actually got selected. But we know after the win over the Packers that the Bears are officially clinched a playoff spot, playoff bound for sure. And if they beat the 49ers or the Lions, they will win the NFC North. And if the Packers lose to the Ravens, which will happen before that game will happen before the Bears play the 49ers, a Packers loss this weekend would also clinch the NFC North for the Bears, regardless of what they do against the San Francisco 49ers. So very much sitting in a great spot in terms of being able to have a home game in the playoffs and, all the exciting things we really love about, winning the NFC North and how much that means when it comes to, everything this team has been aiming for. And really Ryan Poles, since he got here, said, we're going to take the North and give it back, and hasn't necessarily taken the North yet to be able to not give it back. But it's interesting that as these scenarios play out, the Bears still have an option to be the number 2 seed, to be the number 1 seed even. And I guess, in theory, there is still a path for the Bears to not win the NFC North. Like as it stands right now, the Bears are the 2 seed at 11-4. The Packers are the 7 seed at 9-5. But if the Bears lose out and the Packers win out, then the Packers can still win the NFC North. Technically, the Bears would still make the playoffs. They're locked into a playoff spot, but the Packers still have some ability to try and win that NFC North. And then the Bears would drop down to be in what would be the 6th or the 7th seed if they don't win the NFC North. But all odds are the Bears will win the division, and then if they win the division, they will be either the 1, 2, or potentially the 3 seed then as a result, which means they will play, they either have a first-round bye if they're the 1 seed, I guess, but if they're the 2 or the 3 seed, then they'll play the 6th or the 7 seed team in the NFC. And by all accounts, the Bears will almost certainly play either the Green Bay Packers in the first round of the playoffs or the San Francisco 49ers in the first round of the playoffs. It will either be a rematch of this upcoming week's game or last week's game in that first round. There is a weird set of scenarios where the Bears could potentially play the Rams in the first round, but that's less likely, essentially because the Rams, their next 2 games are against the Atlanta Falcons and the Arizona Cardinals, 2 not great teams. I believe the Rams would have to lose both of those games in order for the Bears to have a shot at playing the Rams in the postseason. So it's unlikely that the Rams are going to lose to 2 bad teams to end the season, especially with, seeding and everything still up for grabs there. And they're all still fighting for that division over in the NFC West. So the Rams are going to win at least one or not both of those games. The Bears probably won't play the Rams. It'll be the Packers or the 49ers. And then it's a question of, which would you rather play? And I should say the Bears can still get the number 1 overall seed and have a first-round bye, but they have to win out. The Bears have to beat the 49ers and the Lions, and then they need the Seahawks to lose at least one of their final two games, because the Seahawks are set to be that number one seed as it stands right now, but the Seahawks play the 49ers in their last game of the season. They play the Panthers as well, but likely going to beat the Panthers. But if the 49ers were to beat the Seahawks in that last game, and the Bears would have beaten the 49ers, then the Bears would have the tiebreakers, and the Bears would be the number one overall seed. Like, Bears still have to win out, and they need help from Seattle to be the number one overall seed. In all likelihood, Seattle will most likely be that number one seed, and the Bears will most likely be the number two seed or maybe the number three seed, and then they will most likely play the 49ers or the Green Bay Packers as that 6 or that 7 seed, because the Rams or the Seahawks will be the 1 seed, and the other one will likely be the 5 seed, and then the third place NFC West team will be either 6th or 7th place, depending on how the Green Bay Packers finish. The Lions could replace the Packers in that too. If the Lions win out, the Packers lose out, right? They're not eliminated yet, but for the most, the oversimplification here is that odds are it's Packers or 49ers. And I can't tell you definitively right now, like, who would you rather play in the first round of the playoffs? Well, we haven't seen the Bears play the 49ers yet. We'll know after Sunday night which team we'd rather see in the playoffs, depending on how well the Bears play with the 49ers. And tomorrow on the Locked On Bears podcast, or for Christmas, or whatever holiday you celebrate, we're going to be talking to Eric Crocker from Locked On 49ers for our crossover Thursday podcast, and he's going to give us more of an in-depth look at the 49ers. But I get the sense that maybe the Bears match up a little bit more favorably with San Francisco than they do Green Bay, and that doesn't mean like they're guaranteed to beat San Francisco or that I'm super confident in a win against San Francisco. I think it's going to be a tough game and probably a coin flip, but I think the main thing here is like, I'm less scared of Brock Purdy than I am of like Jordan Love, that Brock Purdy will turn the ball over. Jordan Love rarely turns the ball over, and the Bears have gotten turnovers off Jordan Love, but like Brock Purdy's more likely to give you 3 turnovers, and Jordan Love's maybe going to give you 1. And the 49ers defense is a lot worse than the Packers defense. I think the 49ers offense is clicking right now in a way that's maybe better than the Packers offense, but we'll see how that matchup actually plays on Sunday. I just think, it's tough because if the Packers keep getting injured, and if Jordan Love misses some time with his concussion, and Malik Willis is dealing with an injury now, and Micah Parsons is out, and Evan Williams was out. Like, if the Packers are more banged up, then yeah, I'd rather face a super injured Packers team in the playoffs than a 49ers team that's getting healthier. But if the Packers get healthier, like if both of those teams are at reasonably late season full strength, whatever that can look like right now, I feel like I might rather play the 49ers today. But if the Bears stink it up against the 49ers on Sunday Night Football, maybe we'll get through that and say, maybe rather play the Packers a third time this season. It's something about knowing an opponent really, really well, to having played them twice and kind of seen everything they're going to throw at you, that you can have be as prepared as possible. Whereas a rematch with the 49ers, San Francisco is going to do things a lot differently the second time than the first time, but the Packers don't have a lot more they can do differently the third time to try and combat you. So it's going to be a fun matchup either way. It's going to be a tough matchup either way, but I'm just excited to be talking about playoff matchups for the Chicago Bears that are not just like if maybe they'll potentially sneak in. It's like, no, they're in, and they're probably going to win the NFC North. They could even get a first round bye, but most likely just going to be a home playoff game. Oh, darn that. And oh, shucks. Wouldn't that suck? I'd love to have a home playoff game and see, even if it's the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers again. But I think the ideal playoff path would be finding a way to be the 5 seed and play the Seahawks, or excuse me, play the Carolina Panthers. And if whoever wins the NFC South, the Panthers or the Buccaneers, you want to be the team that plays them in the first round, because that'll be the easiest matchup, even if you're on the road. But of course, you don't want to lose games, and you don't want to be a road team throughout the playoffs. So you don't want to like intentionally lose to become the 5 seed. But I think whatever NFC West team is the 5 seed is going to be a dangerous team, because they'll have an easy path in the first round, and then from there, they'll be hot and rolling through the postseason. So going to be fun to watch how these final couple of games play out, and we'll get through the 49ers game more in depth on tomorrow's podcast. But we also got to talk about the Pro Bowl voting being complete, and the Bears have 3 official Pro Bowlers initially on the Pro Bowl roster, and a good chance that a couple others are added as Pro Bowl alternates once we actually get closer to the Pro Bowl games, which I think are in February now or late January. It's still, more than about a month at least away. So we'll take a look at who got in and maybe who deserved to get in, and why, especially somebody like Darnell Wright maybe was in a tough spot to stick in. And he's a snub, but also it's hard to argue too much against it. And also how crazy the Bears fan voting was, how Bears fans came out to get their guys in the Pro Bowl. So we'll do some Pro Bowl talk coming up next here on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, football games with playoff implications, big basketball matchups, it's all happening all at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy sports. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's fast, simple, and a lot of fun. So you could pick more or less on Caleb Williams' passing yards, DeAndre Swift's rushing yards, DJ Moore's receiving yards, or you could switch over to basketball and mix across sports or hockey or soccer, you name it. They've got it all in PrizePicks. And creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. So download that PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. We knew the Bears would have a few Pro Bowlers, and I don't think we were necessarily surprised by the 3 guys that got in. Maybe one more in particular that we thought also could have gotten in, but no surprise that Joe Thuney is an NFL Pro Bowler for the 6th straight season it is for him. No surprise that Kevin Byard is back in the Pro Bowl after having a real strong bounce back season. You can't really call it a breakout year because he's been a Pro Bowl player before and been one of the best safeties in football, but certainly wasn't that last year or the year before that. So it's been a resurgent season for Kevin Byard. And, among NFC safeties, he's up at the top in a bunch of categories. So he absolutely belongs and deserves in the Pro Bowl. And then Drew Dahlman, I'm certainly not going to say it's a surprise because he's playing really, really well, but it is his first career Pro Bowl. And good for him. I saw his sister or somebody tweeted out a thing from a childhood notebook of Drew Dahlman. I mean, it was 2010, so it's 15 years ago. So childhood is, a little bit of a stretch there, but he was a teenage notebook maybe of Drew Dahlman, talking about wanting to grow up and be an NFL player and be a Pro Bowl caliber player in the NFL and stuff. So that's cool. And I think he also has definitely earned it. He's blocking really well and been on a resurgent offensive line. So no real, major surprises there. But I think a lot of Bears fans surprised to see Darnell Wright not get the Pro Bowl vote or not get in the Pro Bowl roster. He's playing at a very high level. He has certainly taken a step forward, and he's playing at a high level while dealing with injury. He's not full strength with that arm. He's not playing one-armed, but it's not 100% of Darnell Wright, and yet he's still, I think he's playing at what we would widely consider a Pro Bowl level. He is having a Pro Bowl caliber season for sure, and I don't think his snub, if you will, here was because he wasn't playing well enough, right? I mean, or that the level of play wasn't up to the Pro Bowl standard. I think he got left off of the Pro Bowl because the NFC has a lot of talent at the offensive tackle position, and he's kind of just stuck behind really good players ahead of him on the Pro Bowl roster. And it's not it's not that he wasn't good enough. It's that there were 3 guys that are just that much better even than he is. Your 3 Pro Bowl tackles in the NFC were Penei Sewell of the Detroit Lions, Tristan Wirfs of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Trent Williams of the San Francisco 49ers. I can't sit here today and argue that Darnell Wright is better than any of those 3 guys. Those 3 are 3 of the best. They might be the 3 best offensive tackles in the NFL. They just all happen to be in the NFC. I think if Darnell Wright and the Bears were an AFC team, he would be in the Pro Bowl, right? It's not about him not being good enough, but it's about there's maybe 3 future Hall of Famers there in that category. I mean, you still got to see. Sewell and Wirfs are early enough in their careers that they got to sustain it at the current level, but those guys are potential Hall of Famers, and Trent Williams is a future Hall of Fame offensive tackle, in my opinion. And that's not Darnell Wright's fault that the NFC is loaded with good players there. AFC was Deion Dawkins from the Bills, Garrett Bowles from the Broncos, and Joe Alt from the Chargers. Alt's been injured most of the season. I think Darnell Wright, at the very least, is the backup in the AFC if he's there. He's playing as one of the 5 best offensive tackles in the NFL this season, give or take. 3 of the guys better than him are all in the NFC. So there's just not a spot for Darnell Wright. And that sucks. But it doesn't take away from how well he's playing, but it certainly affects, future contract negotiations and bonuses and stuff for being in the Pro Bowl. And also, like, he should be the very next man up, like the next guy, the first one out, right? Outside looking in. Like, if, between now and the Pro Bowl, Trent Williams is dealing with an injury, or Tristan Wirfs isn't healthy enough to go, or Penei Sewell for whatever reason. Like, if any of those 3 guys aren't able to participate in the Pro Bowl games, and then therefore they need to add another offensive tackle to replace one of them, it should almost certainly be Darnell Wright. Like, he is having a strong season. Although the irony there is that because Darnell Wright is dealing with, the injuries that he's been playing through the whole time, if he were to be named to the Pro Bowl, I don't think he should participate in the Pro Bowl games. They don't play a 11-on-11 football game anymore. They play dodgeball and tag or whatever. But, like, even so, I don't want him running around out there ducking dodgeballs or doing agility courses or whatever. Like, if he's not totally 100% healthy, like, he deserves the honor for sure. And can he show up and hang out? But, like, just don't do anything that could risk any kind of re-injury or jeopardize anything for the next season. Like, I get the whole point of not playing a game and doing these mini games instead is to minimize injury risk. But if you're already dealing with, like, an arm injury kind of thing, like, it's one thing if you're healthy enough, but when you're already banged up, don't try and aggravate anything by actually participating in the Pro Bowl games. For me, Darnell Wright in particular, is the most definitive of the Bears, quote unquote, Pro Bowl snubs. I think there are a handful of other guys that belong in the conversation as snubs, but I think he's the most deserving, and I'm more comfortable with the idea that everyone else that didn't get in, yeah, they deserve an argument, a handful of other guys, but, like, I'm not like, oh, wow, what an egregious error that Nahshon Wright, for example, didn't get into the Pro Bowl. I think he's had a career best season. I think he has had a season that has far exceeded expectations and has been a positive, good player for the Chicago Bears. But I'm not fully convinced that having a bunch of turnovers, that alone is enough to be a Pro Bowl cornerback. Like, to make the argument that he's better than the other cornerbacks that made the Pro Bowl. J.C. Horn, Devin Witherspoon, or is it Devon Witherspoon, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell. Like, you could argue, like, one of the 2 Eagles cornerbacks, maybe not, but, like, there are other really good cornerbacks that also belong that didn't get in. It's not like Nahshon Wright is clearly, like, I think Darnell Wright at the tackle position is like, oh yeah, like he's very clearly the next best guy who deserved to be right in there. I'm not so convinced that Nahshon Wright is, like, clearly the next best cornerback in the NFC. And I think the short, oversimplified version of this argument is that, yes, he has 1,000 turnovers this season. It's not 1,000. I should pull up the exact number because it does make the point for the argument. Like, he leads the NFL, at least leads cornerbacks with 5 interceptions, and I think he has 2 forced fumbles. He has 7 turnovers in that regard this season. That is great. That is most in the NFL. But those 7 turnovers are 7 out of, he's played 900 snaps this season. He's been on the field for about 900 plays. And on 7 of those plays, he has been brilliant, phenomenal, excellent. But 7 plays out of 900 is less than 1% of the plays he's been on the field. And he has been great in those very small sample size of a play, but it's like 0.7% of the plays he's been on the field for. And the other, so if he's been on the field for 900 plays, 7 of them have been brilliant. The other 893 plays, not Pro Bowl caliber cornerbacking. Like, he's been targeted a ton. He's, I think, top 20 in how often he's targeted because quarterbacks, they can get open. They can have receivers open against Nahshon Wright. I'm not here to say he's had, like, a bad season or anything. It's just, Pro Bowl is a high standard at the cornerback spot, and he's given up 7 touchdowns this season. Like, he's got 7 interceptions, but he's also given up 7 touchdowns, right? There are negatives that come with those positives. And I think of Pro Bowl players as, maybe they don't have quite as many interceptions as him, but, like, over the full body of work on the season, more consistent from snap to snap. And Nahshon Wright is a lot of really good and plenty of maybe not so good along the way. That is the difference between having a really good season and having like the Pro Bowl caliber season that he's been having so far. Like I think Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, they don't have as many turnovers by any means, but they've been more consistent, better coverage cornerbacks over the course of this season. And you can go around the NFL. I think there definitely is more cornerback strength in the AFC than the NFC. And I think Wright has an opportunity to get in as an alternate at some point. If the Eagles make the Super Bowl and those two guys aren't in the Pro Bowl, he might be able to sneak in there. But I don't think he's like so obviously clearly deserving of a Pro Bowl. Like he's had a really good year. He deserves a big payday and, a much bigger contract and all the credit in the world for the progress he's made. And we can praise him without inserting him in the Pro Bowl as a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. He's probably been a top 32 cornerback in the NFL, and that's great. That's way better than he was supposed to be. And we can just leave it there, and that can be okay. But I think there's a couple other Bears that belong on the fringe of these conversations, especially because of all the Bears fan voting that accounted for a third of the Pro Bowl equation here. Bears fans went all out, and maybe a little bit too all out, and gave a bunch of Pro Bowl votes to Bears players that didn't actually deserve it. So we'll take a look at some other guys who are in the conversation to sneak in as alternates, and also how much the fan voting from Chicago Bears fans was just a bit over the top this season in a good way. Next on Locked On Bears. So after the two Wrights, Darnell and Nishan, I think there's a handful of other Bears players that belong in the conversation of, they could get in as an alternate if there's an injury or Super Bowl guys that open up spaces for them. I think back to the 2018 Pro Bowl when Mitch Trubisky made it to the Pro Bowl as an alternate. He was like the 7th quarterback because 3 quarterbacks were hurt and then 2 were in the Super, where I guess 1 would be the NFC in the Super Bowl, right? Like there was enough of a delineation of quarterbacks that he snuck in as an alternate and gets to be a Pro Bowl forever and ever. Or Tyler Huntley from the Ravens, right, made the Pro Bowl a couple of seasons ago, way down the list. And and I think back to that same Pro Bowl, what you had Akeem Hicks, Cody Whitehair, Tariq Cohen, Mitch Trubisky. There's a couple others. They had like 6 or 7 Pro Bowlers that season. And so there's no reason why someone like Caleb Williams can't Mitch Trubisky his way into the Pro Bowl. Is he one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFC this season? No. But, you start to go down the list, and we don't have to I don't want to power rank NFC quarterbacks. No, I don't think he belongs in above Stafford, Prescott, and as much as it pains me to say it, Dak Prescott's had the more productive, consistent season this season. I think, which quarterback do I want to lead my team? It's Caleb Williams, but which one has the resume this season? The short-term window, I guess you can sell me on Sam Darnold there, but Jared Goff belongs in that conversation in terms of what the season has been this season. Again, Caleb is one of 3 to 5 quarterbacks in the league you want on your team for the long-term future. But if you're just evaluating what they've done this season, Stafford, Prescott, Goff, Darnold in the NFC, and then you get into Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Caleb Williams are that next category here. I think the big 4 I just talked about are the clear head and shoulders Pro Bowl NFC guys ahead of Caleb. Then you could tell me Caleb is number 5 there. And so, if, say, I don't know, the Rams are in the Super Bowl, so you take Stafford out of there, and then Dak Prescott's dealing with an ankle, so you need 2 more NFC quarterbacks. So you take Jared Goff and Caleb Williams. He could sneak in that way. I don't think he's this head and shoulders absolute snub that got robbed by not being in the Pro Bowl. No, he didn't deserve to be a first ballot, type of Pro Bowl starter this season just yet, but he could get in there in that conversation. I think had Rome Odunze been fully healthy this season and, been able to stay on the same page with Caleb and keep building that, I think he could have been up there near this conversation. I think DeAndre Swift might be a little bit too far from this conversation at the running back position. He's had a really good season, but I don't think he's been, that kind of running back. But also I think the NFC is a little bit thinner at the running back position. You got Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and then McCaffrey probably belongs in ahead of DeAndre Swift. But then Swift and Rico Dowdle are kind of that next tier. Josh Jacobs in that next tier. Kenneth Walker, he could be in that fringe conversation there. And we should throw Josh Blackwell on special teams. I know I wasn't as high on that when we talked about Pro Bowl fan voting a couple weeks ago, but I didn't account for it. He blocked a field goal, I think, or a punt earlier this season. Like, he's made some big special teams plays, had some good returns. TJ Edwards is the other name that I always think about here, but he's listed as outside linebacker because he's a 4-3 outside linebacker, but they put all the outside linebackers together. So he's at the same position as edge rushing outside linebackers. Like, he's competing with, like the TJ Watts of the world. I realize that's AFC, but like it's hard for him to make it as an outside linebacker when he's not the pass rushing type. Like, the NFC outside linebackers are Brian Burns, Jared Verse, and Byron Young. Like, they're all 3-4 edge rushing pass rushers. So like, I mean, they just, for some reason, they won't categorize him as an inside linebacker where he might have a better shot. But that's kind of the trouble for him too, especially because I think you get your hope up when you see the fan voting, where Bears fans voted more than any other fan base in the NFL. They tallied that. That's not just like anecdotally. Like, no, they listed like the top 5 teams whose fans and players received the most votes, and the Bears were number 1. And when you look across the Pro Bowl voting results, I think we got a little carried away here. I think Bears fans went a little bit too far in their Pro Bowl voting. I'm never gonna say, hey, don't support your players, but like, there's a few guys that got a lot of Pro Bowl votes that are not Pro Bowl caliber Bears players, and it's okay to admit that. Like, I'm not upset that Nashawn Wright was number 1 in cornerback votes, or even that Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson were the top 2 guard votes there. But like, Bears backup nickel cornerback Nick McLeod was the 8th most votes among NFC cornerbacks, and he's not good. Like, he's not even a Pro Bowl player. He's not a starting caliber player. He's a guy that I'm worried every time he steps out on the field. And I get that Bears fans are just going through the ballot clicking Bears player, Bears player, Bears player, Bears player, but like, he shouldn't be on the ballot. I mean, I don't mean to denigrate Nick McLeod this bad, but like, he's not a good player and belongs nowhere near the Pro Bowl. Like, among Bears cornerbacks, he's like 8th in who I would put in the Pro Bowl, and he's 8th in the NFC in voting this season. Same thing at defensive end, not that extreme, but like Austin Booker, 8th in NFC Pro Bowl voting. And I like Austin Booker. He has shown you some flashes this season. I think there has been progress from year 2 to year 1. But I don't think I could find a Bears fan on the planet that could, with a straight face, argue that Austin Booker has played at a Pro Bowl level this season, or that he belongs in the Pro Bowl over guys like Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, and Aiden Hutchinson. And, this includes AFC Max Crosby, Danielle Hunter, Rashawn Gary, even in there. Like, we like Austin Booker. He's not a Pro Bowl caliber player, and that's okay. But like, you look across the board at some of these positions where the Bears had like Tremaine Edmonds, number 1 among inside linebackers, Wright, number 1 against cornerbacks, Thuney and Jackson, number 1 amongst guards, Drew Dahlman, number 1 amongst centers, Kevin Byard, number 1 amongst free safeties. You go across the board, and there are Bears littered at every corner. Devin Duvernay, number 1 among return specialists. DeAndre Swift had the most votes among running backs. Colston Loveland was 3rd among tight ends. I mean, it's just crazy. Darnell Wright was, of course, number 1 among tackles. Like, Quan Brisker was number 1 among safety. Like, if it was just fan voting, the entire Pro Bowl would be Chicago Bears players. The whole NFC roster would pretty much just be the Bears roster. But the only players that you don't see on the list are like left tackle Ozzie Trapillo. That's because you got your defensive ends, your defensive tackles were on there, your linebackers are on there, your cornerbacks are on there. Like, I think Trapillo is about the only Bears starter that wasn't top 10 in Pro Bowl voting, at least on offense and defense. I think special teams wasn't quite as much there, but like, that's crazy. And I'm glad that Bears fans voted that much. I'm also glad that it only counts as a third of the actual deciding factor in who makes the Pro Bowl, because it wouldn't be a very interesting Pro Bowl if it was just all Bears players. And we can all admit that not every Bears starter is a Pro Bowl caliber player. But hey, it's going to be fun to see who all gets there. And, maybe it goes without saying, but maybe I should say it. And, if the Bears happen to make the Super Bowl this season, none of them will be at the Pro Bowl. So that's, not totally out of the question, but not anything that we're counting on happening this season. But however far the Bears go in the postseason, you can be sure we're going to break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today, and hopefully every single day. If you are an everyday who tunes in 5 days a week, even on the holidays like this, thank you so much for listening to Locked On Bears. Really, I don't do this just for me. I mean, I could sit here and talk to myself for a half hour if I wanted to, I guess, but I do it for you. And so I appreciate you tuning in. If you want to take your listening to the next level, because you're like, I'm listening every day anyway, wouldn't it be nice to listen maybe ad-free and maybe get into a members-only Locked On Bears Discord group chat? Well, you can for $5 a month or $50 a year. You can go to lockedonbears.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and get an ad-free podcast feed for Locked On Bears compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major podcasting apps. Or keep listening the way you are right now. We're not going behind a paywall. We're not going anywhere. You can always tune in free and available on all of your favorite platforms. And when you tune in, no matter how and where and why you tune in, you're always going to leave with another opportunity to bear down.